Good morning, writers. It's a bad hair day. Good morning, writers. It's the next episode of the Much Existing Young Writers blog, and we're here to talk about the next episode of That Book's Not Here. There we go. It's The Quest. It's basic, and I'm going to tell you what it's about. Now, the title alone, The Quest, should tell you basically everything you need to know about it. The Quest works well as a mechanism for uniting a bunch of smaller, disconnected stories into a longer narrative. If you have a distant goal that the protagonist is trying to achieve, it's easy to justify a lot of smaller goals and trips and side quests along the way. And it works as long as each of these small narratives contribute to the larger quest, even if it's just getting there. The quest is very common in fantasy literature. There's a dragon or something that must be defeated. There's a magic ring that has to be thrown into a volcano. But it also appears in war stories, things where you have a specific mission to accomplish and many obstacles getting in the way of accomplishing it. You'll also find that the quest is the basic plot that most commonly features a group of protagonists rather than a single one. These quests are difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish alone, and so we don't have a single protagonist, we have a group of protagonists, each with a unique set of skills that help accomplish the quest or overcome the obstacles they encounter along the way. As such, these groups are susceptible to falling under the category of Aristotle's four humors. If you're not familiar with the four humors, just think of the four Ninja Turtles. If you're not familiar with the Ninja Turtles, just think of the four main characters of Sex and the City. If you're not familiar with Sex and the City, think of the four Hobbits. We can talk about the four humors at a later date, but remember, if Aristotle said it, it was wrong. These protagonists are a very specific group of people. They're not kings like in the Overcoming the Monster plot. They're not extremely poor people such as Rags to the Riches plot. They are exceptional but not extraordinary individuals. They're unique but they're not special. They're told to go on the quest usually by an authority figure that they trust. Their king who's united the four greatest explorers to find a new world. There's a general who's created a team of elite soldiers to accomplish a difficult mission. They're a wizard who comes to a small town to tell a young man to take his magic ring and throw it into a volcano. In each of these cases, you have a greater authority figure telling a relatively minor person to accomplish this great and almost insurmountable task. This is why the group is necessary, because these protagonists are nothing special. Although each individual protagonist is far from being a storied hero, the group turns out to be more than a sum of its parts, and exceptional in many ways. And so they set off on this journey, which often involves a very specific goal, but no indication of how it should be accomplished. You have to save the downed pilot from behind enemy lines, you have to rescue the princess from Bowser's clutches, you have to throw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom, you have to collect ancient scriptures of Buddhist faith. All of these goals are very specific, but the way to accomplish them is intentionally vague. And this is important because no matter what the protagonists get into, it is inevitably going to help them in their quest. When Merry and Pippin are kidnapped by orcs, it leads to a long series of events that eventually allows them to convince the Ents to march on Isengard to defeat Saruman, Sauron's right hand and most important ally. That's because the most important part of the quest isn't the goal, it's the journey. It's the obstacles that the protagonists face along the way and how they are overcome. Because in the end, the quest is a collection of obstacles that the protagonists face. Each of them usually being a self-contained narrative that ends with one of the characters learning more about themselves or the protagonist gaining a powerful ally that helps them accomplish the larger quest. The quest reaches its climax right before the goal is accomplished. Frodo stands at the fires of Mount Doom but doesn't have the strength to cast it in there, instead choosing to keep it for himself. And it is only a final clash with Gollum that accidentally causes the ring to get launched into the fires is it actually accomplished. Bowser appears for a third and final time, this time fiercer and stronger than ever before. But Mario, summoning the strength that he learned from the first two times he beat Bowser, he's able to overcome this giant lizard and free the princess from captivity. And so the quest comes to its conclusion. The protagonists win, they go their separate ways, if they're still alive, and they return to their homes and everything is good. As you can tell from these examples, The Lord of the Rings is the classic version of the quest narrative. I just noticed the shadow behind me. That was there before. And so it's become very common in fantasy literature and in things inspired by fantasy literature to use this basic plot. Things like tabletop RPGs and video games very often utilize this plot line. It's something you see quite commonly in those two mediums, if for no other reason than the fact that it's the best way to tell an extremely long narrative. This is actually one of the first basic plots that hasn't died out in modern literature, if for no other reason than a distant and difficult goal that needs to be accomplished is a decent way to unify an otherwise disjointed narrative. So the quest is a basic plot that you probably have a lot of familiarity with, but understanding how it operates is still important for knowing when it's appropriate to use it. Especially helpful for anyone playing Dungeons and Dragons. Structuring a narrative under a large quest is the easiest way to give it a recognizable narrative. And when you're improvising a story, recognizable is about as high as you can hope for. Thank you for joining me once again as we continue our talk about the 7 basic plots. Next week we'll be moving on to the 2 plot lines you probably already recognize, comedy and tragedy, because you can't talk about them separately. If you have any questions or comments, leave one below. They're right there. And so until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for watching. Edmonton viewers, you might have the chance to be a video poem maker. The Writers Guild of Alberta is hosting a teen writing and film project that gives you the opportunity to bring your words to life in video form. You'll be given expert guidance as well as all the tools you need to make it happen. For information, check out this link somewhere. Here. Sure. Click on it. It's easy.